Friday. It's gonna hit the little buttons on my phone here and over here. There we go. All right. Well, we made it through another week. And we've got a fun class today. This is our Peyote with a Twist workshop. And this is a stitch that was invented by Geraldine Linz. And I hope I'm saying her name right. I read an article once, it was years ago now, I read it in the Beadwork magazine, and it showed how to do this stitch. And she's a very generous artist that has shared this technique with the world. And a lot of people who love the look of, like, for example, bead crochet, but find that whole stringing hundreds of beads onto what's essentially like a cotton cord, and then getting the hook and getting that first couple of rows set up. I struggle with that. So I'd always kind of thought that getting a look like bead crochet was kind of out of my reach until I tried this stitch by Geraldine, and it is very cool. So I was thinking, let's share it with you guys today. And if you have, questions, this is of course our workshop where we've got lots of time for questions, lots of time to show it a couple times and share ideas for how to finish it, and any other ideas you guys have. So I'm just taking a quick look at everyone here. I think everyone here has done even count peyote stitch. Drop a note in the chat if you feel like you want to do a recap of even count peyote, but I feel like everyone here pretty much has that down. And so we can jump ahead on the flat even count peyote and just jump right into the actual peyote with a twist part. So what I have here on the mat is the finished necklace. And so you're by no means stuck with doing a necklace. So you can do bracelets. You can actually do a lot of different things. You can do a necklace that's made with just part of a design, and then just bring some like silk cord through it, or rat tail, or so many things you can do. This one, I went for the full length collar necklace that kind of has like a snake feel to it. The cool thing about this stitch is just how flexible it is. I mean, it really is as flexible as a bead crochet rope that was done on a cotton cord, right? But this one was done on the .006 or 008 Wildfire. I actually ran out of 006, and so that's why I've got the 008 today. And so I can report that they both work. And they both work really well, and they don't affect how flexible your design is. So whichever one you got, go for it. And I also wanted to show how to finish these ends. It's just one idea, but there's lots of different ways to do this, so you're not stuck with this option either. Let's see. So we introduced let's do the beads. I used size 8 seed beads. So you can use any size beads you want, but the size 8s were the ones that I felt like were kind of the Goldilocks for this kind of rope. They're not too teeny and such that it would take forever, although a size 11 rope made like this is going to look really intricate and very cool. It's just going to take a lot longer, but don't be afraid to try it because it's gorgeous, right? I used the size 8 throughout the entire design with the exception of the ends. And on the ends, I just pulled in some size 10s. So there's the beads, and for the thread, Wildfire size 10 beading needle. Got those. And you'll need some scissors. You'll want to have some chainless pliers to flatten your Wildfire. You can get that threaded. And any other things that you might need really depend on how you're going to finish it. So if you want to do this closure, some kind of clasp, like a magnetic or a lobster claw or a chain, or anything like that. If you want to do a different style, I have a few other samples floating around up here that we can experiment with, and I'm just going to show them to you really quick. There's a bracelet length, and here's another almost to the length of a bracelet. Might do this one on silk as like a half necklace, not sure. Don't be afraid to try patterns. Any pattern you create in a flat square can be turned into this rope. So it's fun to experiment too. Like, just when you first come up with, the only catch is the pattern would need to repeat itself lengthwise. If it repeats itself lengthwise and you can follow it, when you bring it into the tube, it's intuitive. You'll see coming out of this color, add this color. And because there's an up bead and that's a natural progression, it is easy to see what bead goes next. So don't be afraid to try a pattern. This one is probably the easiest pattern of all because it's just, one edge. But I also have with me some leather, so I can show you how to do a leather closure. It's similar to what we've done before. I think a lot of you guys were here for the Russian spiral we did. For that one, we did a barrel knot. on a bracelet. And so I thought I'll demo that today. I just did one of those in a stitch. I made a bracelet for my mom and she wanted a button. So I actually did a leather button closure with one of these in a bracelet. So yeah, so many ideas and so much to cover. So I'm gonna just jump right in with step one. And I'm going to switch up the colors because as beautiful as these colors are, they don't really jump out of the zoom as easily as the other colors might. So I have already ready to go something in these colors. And so what I've got here, I'm going to zoom in just a little bit, is a square of peyote stitch that I started earlier. And it is 11 rows long. And the way you can count that is you can start on one side, count up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. If you just count your edge rows, that's how I usually figure out how many rows I've done in peyote. Oh, hey, hey, Kimberly, it's great to meet you too. Yeah, I was at Bead Fest last week, so I got to meet a lot of folks out there and I had a really fun time. So it was great to meet you. And so what I have here, and I'm just going to go over really quick some tips for making, making it a little faster because, it takes a while to finish these ropes. And so anywhere you can save a few minutes is great. You're going to end up having to add thread, especially if you do a necklace, but even if you just do a bracelet. For example, on this one that I've got here, this one, even just to get this length, I added thread 2 times in addition to the trick I'm about to show you that saves you a thread add. So it's essentially a 3 working length adds just to do the bracelet. So this is thread hungry. This uses a lot of thread. And the reason it does is because it's essentially for every time it goes around, you're adding 11 beads and it's zigzagging. So, I mean, the amount of distance traveled by the thread in this stitch is really far by the time you've done like a few rows, right? So it uses a lot, but to start, if you want to begin with a really like a double your working length, and what you can do is put a stop bead in the middle of that working length. And because the cool thing about this stitch is it can be worked from either side. So once you've built the first little cannoli, and I got that from Jill Wiseman, she calls it a cannoli, but what you can do is you can work from this side and from this side. So if you leave yourself a really long tail, you can come along and just start working from that side too. And it really does just pick up from wherever you are in the stitch. So that's how I started mine. And that's what I've got showing here. I've got this really long strand on one side, and I've already got a needle on that side. And then here I've got the stop bead, and I've got a really long strand coming out of there, really super long tail. So I can keep going in both directions. And then all that I did for creating this was I started by stringing 10 beads. So I did a pattern where I've got one color, one solid color, and then I strung 8 of the other. And then I strung one more of the other color and came back and did skip a bead, add a bead, skip a bead, add a bead. And so you end up with what's essentially you're adding, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 5 beads per row. So you start by stringing 10, and then the thing with peyote stitches, when you add row 3, that becomes 5 beads per row. So this is 11 rows, and it started with 10 beads. And just before I go on further, I want to make sure just one more time everybody's got this part down because I didn't cover it, and I can if you need me to. So if you want to see this, I can just drop it in the chat and we can do that. I feel like this one is one that you guys have already got. Okay, so I've got a few people saying they need to see how I made this square right here. So let me go ahead and just, I'm going to demo that really quick. Okay, so go ahead and start with, again, like we were saying before, if you feel comfortable doing so, it's not a requirement, but if you'd like to double your comfortable length of working thread, which for me is a wingspan. So I'll take the spool and the end of the thread and I'll stretch it out in my arms like a full wingspan, right? And bonus if you hit your bead ball, because that means you really did it. And then just trim that. And if you have pliers handy, it can really help you get your needle threaded. So go ahead and just flatten. And the reason I do that is it gets it through your needle like a lot easier. Excuse me, guys. Didn't quite flatten that enough. There we go. There we go. Okay, I'm gonna bend that over. And what I did here is I only pulled down a few inches. You could probably pull more. I'm gonna grab some water really quick. But really, whatever makes it so that you can pull your needle all the way through without having to do like multiple pulls of your arm, just saves you time. Okay, so here is my color B, and it doesn't matter what color you do. In the sample, color A was a silver bead, and color B was the Travertine on chalk, which is that beige, beautiful color. But again, I'm working these in brighter colors for today because it's hard to see in a demo, those nice naturals. Okay. And so I'm going to start with one stop bead. And why don't I do that in just another color? Just to help me out. So I don't get it mixed up with my other beads. And what a stop bead looks like is it's just a bead to stop your thread from moving. See that right there? So I'm just creating that. So go ahead and bring that onto your needle. And again, bring that to the midpoint of your thread. So not all the way down, but just to your, like your midpoint, you know? And come back through it. So you're looping through that bead to create a little stop bead like that. And so it'll look a little bit like that. And now you want to string the pattern. So 10 beads, we're going to start with one S8A, size 8A color. And then you need 8B. There's 8. And end with one of the S8A. Total of 10 there. I'm going to bring that down to meet your stop bead. And just set it there. And now we're going to start peyote stitch. And so we're going to skip the first bead, right? Skipping the first one. Pick up one of your S8A beads and go through the second bead in that row. And so you're heading toward your stop bead. And your beads should sit kind of like that. They may not perfectly do that for the first couple of stitches, but just patiently try to get them to nudge them in place. Excuse me. And I'm going to skip this bead here, the next one in my row, and I'm going to go through the next one. We're going to do this, a couple more times for a total of 5 beads. And another trick is if you're having loose beads like I am, see how mine are kind of just going all crazy. You can grab this side and your tail side and pull it apart. Tightens everything up a lot. But I always find I still have to help that first little row there. There we go. And you can do that after you add every bead if you want to. Or you can just come along at the end and do that. It depends on if it helps you visualize it or not, especially if you got a pattern going. This is a pretty easy pattern. So we're just going to skip the next bead and then go through the next one. And again, I picked up an S8B. So we're going to work all of B now until the end of this row. Another B. Skip the next one. And go through the one after that. One more, pick up one more B. Skip the next one. Let's just go through the one after that. Remember, this one at the end is our stop bead, the one that's in a weird color. It's just there to hold our place. We're not worried about using it or going through it. So there's the first rows. And they're a little wonky, but they're okay. They're gonna straighten up a lot when we add the next one. So from here on out, what we're gonna do is we're just gonna maintain that color A on the side. So every time we head this way, we're gonna be adding a A at the first part. And every time we head this way, the A will be the first bead we add. And all the rest in between will be the B's, the purple. So here's an A. Let's bring it through here. We're gonna do this till we have 11 rows. And that's the next one. So what I'm doing here is I'm picking up color B and I'm going through the next up bead, and it's really easy to see which is the next bead because it's going to be the one that's sticking up. So we just keep going through the next bead that's sticking up until we get to the end. So you'll get a pretty good idea just by looking at it what bead color to pick up, but the next one you want to do here is your color A. Whichever color A you're using. And pull tight, that one will sit as an edge bead. Color B is going to fill the rest of the row. Each row has 5 beads. Let's bring my stop bead closer there. So just coming along. Oh, that's cool, Cindy. Yeah, and so the color A is the next one. Put that one up. Coming down through here. So color A going into the next up bead. And then we just want to keep going until we have a total of 11 rows. And so this is even count peyote. Oop, I picked up the wrong color. Sorry, guys. And so even count peyote stitch is it's one we do a lot. And next month we're going to be doing a back to basics. So it's more of a more beginner style. Here's like an intro to flat even count. So we're going to be diving into that pretty deep for September. We decided to go with kind of like a back to school theme. I actually have those samples behind me, so I'll show you guys those in a little bit here. All right. So it takes a little bit of time, but you'll eventually get your 11 rows. It's taking me a little bit here. Oh yeah, yes, and it's true. So definitely challenging. So delicas make it so easy. It makes it seem challenging to use the other beads, but yeah, totally. I love using the delicas. You know what I haven't tried though is I haven't tried delicas for this stitch for the round peyote with a twist. I can't think of why they wouldn't work, but I feel like the round stitches might be more flowy. Sorry, the round beads. And just in general, rope stitches and round beads, I'm not sure, but I feel like they might be lend themselves to like a more flexible rope. But I haven't tried it, so I can't say that for sure. I just kind of followed suit. I knew a lot of the samples I'd seen, they were all done with rounds. But you know what? I have been actually craving doing a nice Delica peyote. Maybe we should do that. Just another, we do a lot of them. And so as far as like making them a class, for a lot of you guys, you'd be kind of just watching me do the same thing over and over. So I wasn't sure if it'd be interesting as a class, but I do love a good pattern, and maybe we could come up with a new finishing technique that would be the focus of it. And so we could do another one. I've got 5 on this side, 5 on this side. I'm almost there. What I find is the side with your stop bead. Oh, there's like a giant truck going down my street. Sorry if that's loud. There'll be 5 S8A on the side with your stop bead. It's 6 on the side that does have your working thread exiting from it. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And here's our 6th one. So here's our 11th row. But yeah, back to what Cindy was saying about the round beads. So what I noticed though with Peyote is those first few rows with the round beads, they're going to be really wonky. Like they're all over the place. But then look at how nicely this one shifted out. Like it got a lot easier for me to like work with just after getting maybe like 5 or 6 rows on it. So it's something that kind of improves as you keep going. I also notice it's better with a wider band. Like really thin bands, you might see how wavy it is, but then on a, on a wider one, they tend to, it gives you more averaging for the differences, maybe slight variations in size, I feel like. Yeah, so there's our starter and our other sample to look at, making sure they match. And we got 6 and 6 and 5 on that side. So how's everyone feeling about the starter square? That's our foundation. We want to have those 11 rows going. I got a thumbs up from Sharon. All right. Okay, guys. So we've got thumbs up from Kylie and Una. Awesome. Thanks, guys. And okay. I see one Carol's in the chat saying not there. Let's see here. So not finished stitching it, Carol, or did you mean not understanding the starting part? Because I think what I would recommend is if you've got it down, like you know the stitch and you're ready to keep going. But yeah, and so Carol, so if you're new to our classes, usually folks don't try to work along while we're teaching it. Some people do what just kind of, but we have to keep it into the time frame that we're allowed. And so we are here to just kind of mostly learn it, and there's a replay. You get a copy of the video, so you'll get a chance to be able to pause it while you're working. So, but I won't always be able to go at the at a speed where we can all work together, unfortunately, given that we've only got the time that we've got here. But it's mostly just so we have this free format, so questions can be asked and answered. And if there's anything you're really stuck on, those are the things I want to make sure I go back and cover. But I won't be able to just keep a pace with everyone, if that makes sense. So I'm going to go ahead and just I would advise watching this part and then going back and maybe finishing it like with the replay, or even once you got this next part down, you can just go back to the part you were working before, even during class. So that's sometimes what I do. If I'm watching a class, I'll tune in for the parts where I don't know what I'm doing, and then I'll go back and finish what I was doing, sort of thing. So I'm going to show this a bunch of times because this is like the real clincher. This is the part of Peyote with a stitch where I got stuck the first like 3 or 4 times I tried it. And the places where I got hung up is direction. So knowing what bead to come out of, what bead to go into. And so that part, once you've got that, everything is easy. It's smooth sailing. It's the stitch, repeated over and over and over forever. But it's basically the that first step. It's getting this first step down that I find is very easy to get. Yeah, Carol, I'm so sorry. You can message me after class and I will help you personally. Okay. All right. So we're going to exit from, here's where we're at. We are at the edge bead here. Let me show you on the sample. from this side, showing where we are relative to your stop bead. And in the diagram, you can see it too. You can see the stop beads here. And I use that kind of as a marker so we know what side we're on. And your working thread will be exiting down here from this bead. You can see our working threads down here. And the trick is just to make sure you're going through in the same direction. And it really doesn't seem right, right? It's super counterintuitive. It really threw me off. Like the first time I did it, I felt like, no, it needs to go this way, right? But once you just, I had to force my mind to not think that way. Because in Peyote stitch, we always want to, for some reason, I felt like it needed to bring it over in that direction. So try this. Exiting from here, crossing all the way over your piece. And you just want to go through this one here. From this side to this side. So this is my right, in case that helps anyone, right to left. And when you do that, it's going to pull it into like a little cannoli shape. See how I kind of brought those together? And it may not stay like that the first time, which is actually good because it helps me show what we're going to do next. The next thing you're going to want to do, and I'm going to put it flat again so I can give you the actual like real estate where we're going. So we went through this side. We're going to go through this one in this direction. So I'm going to pull tight again. And I do think this is kind of like a zipper stitch, you know, like when you do the peyote rings, a little bit like that, right? So go ahead and come back through that next bead. It's essentially the next up bead in your row. And really what we did is we borrowed that corner bead and made it our new bead to go between the up beads. And from here, you would just finish this row. So I'm going to pull it apart though. I want to show it again. Because this is the key moment. And we'll finish that. We'll pull this together, finish a row or two, and then we'll switch to the other one. We'll show it one more time because I have two samples now. So there's our square. And we're exiting from this right side bead. So we're going to jump over all of these beads here. And we're just going to go all the way through this one like that. Just going to pull that tight. And then we're going to go through this bead now. Let's see if it'll let me zipper it together just like that. And there it is. So there's the cannoli shape, that famous shape that kind of inspired the design, I think. And so from here, all we're going to do is we're just going to fill in our up beads like we would in regular peyote. So we're going to put a bee in between those two bees. 1, 2, 3 times until we get to the edge here. So I just picked up a bee. I'm going to go through the next one. I'm going to pick up another bee. We'll go through the next one. One more. Next one. And now we're at the edge. We have one more space. And then just note that you want this to flow in a line. This is the color A. So in this particular pattern, we're just going to do one more bead. And so there it is. And you can see how cute that is. That can become a lot of elements in a design. Like you could weave in your thread now, reinforce it. And how cute would that be? You could put a pearl inside, or I just did like a metal design where we had made these cone shapes with like sheet metal. And this was the main element. But there you can form it with seed beads too. A really fun way to get that started. So from here, it's really easy. I'm just going to do 2 more rows and we're going to go back to that other sample I have, and we're just going to do this all again. So we're going to pick up a color A. From here on out, you only need to add color A on the going side, which is this one here. Color A is going to come through, going into our next up bead here. Returning to go back, adding our next row. And we're going to go through with color B now. So 1 and 2, and it's easy to see here in my hand, but I want to make sure everyone else is having an easy time seeing what I'm showing, is that it's really the same up beads that we had before. We're just there because they're in a curve. That's the only difference, and I still feel like they're pretty easy to spot. But there's those. Okay, and so I haven't added my last bead in this row yet because there's there's something new to show. Before I go and do that, I was just going to switch right back to that other sample and make sure I show this in extra time. How to go from here to that round shape. All right, so we're exiting from this bead here. This is the one on the edge. We've got 5 beads going down the side. And again, it's that really kind of counterintuitive. I'm going to go through this A bead up here, right? And when you pull, it gets you this shape here. And then you want to come back and go through that next up bead there at the bottom. Really does look a lot like a zipper stitch to me. Just getting some of my extra thread out of the way there. And then there's that join. And one of the things, let's see, so I like to always share kind of some of the pitfalls. I'm seeing one here in my own work. This bead was really lifting up when I was doing my zipper together. And it's a lot harder to fix when you've got it joined, but you can fix it here by pulling this thread. And if that doesn't work, come out. And before you do the next step from here, there's a kind of, it's optional, but if you're feeling like this is loose, this bead right here, you can reinforce it before doing this next step. So you can go back through this bead here. This is going to look like an odd count turn. You can go through the next V bead here. And again, this is just optional if you feel like it's loose and you want to reinforce. There, that tightens it up. So now this bead over here is a lot tighter than it was, meaning this first B bead that's sticking up here in this row. So when I do my cannoli now, that's not going to be loose. For some reason it was when I did this, this sample. So let's show this again. We're just coming through this top bead here. And then we're going to come back through that B bead. And there, that's a lot tighter. Check that out. So try that if you feel like it's loose, if you feel like it's not doing what you want it to do, and give that a try. So let's keep going on this one. Let's pick up another B bead, fill in the next up position, which is going through the next up bead here. Grab another one. And one more. And last one. Up through there. Okay. Oh, good. That's good. Yeah, it's not. How are you guys feeling about it? So we've done we have done the hardest part. We haven't done the turn yet on the inside. I haven't shown that yet. It looks like I can still pull this apart if we need to show that one more time. So if anyone would like to see it again, I'll do that. It's kind of the main, it's the main thing. Like once you have that down, everything else I feel like comes into place really easily. So let's go ahead and pull that out. I'm just going to quickly back out of my stitches for this one. And I'm needling through needle side, which is bad. But so far, so good, right? All right, let's go through this way. Okay. And so there's our flat piece again. And I'm going to show in the diagram just one more time because I think it sometimes will help with visualizing what we're doing. We've got this flat piece here. We're just exiting from this bead here. This is the last one that our thread's coming out of. And we're going through the opposing one here in the upper corner, and we're headed in this direction. Going through it this direction. And that's the weirdest part for me. I don't know why, for some reason, I really just want to go the other direction. So I force myself every time to see it. No, I want to go this way. So I'm going through this direction and then we come all the way back down across, right? And head back through this one. And I feel like maybe it helps to explain it. I think it might make sense if you think about this as your next bead that you're adding. Because with peyote stitch, you know, you'd pick up a new bead, go through the next bead, and so on for each row. And in this case, instead of picking up a new bead, you're taking this one and treating it like your new bead, and then just going through your next up bead. With the only tricky part of knowing what direction do I go through this bead to add it, because it is attached to other beads, right? And so that was the really the only part that I felt was even remotely not like something that didn't intuitively make sense from a peyote stitch perspective. But like to show you what I mean visually, here's our next A bead, right? We would want to just pick that up and go through this bead. We would do that and we would just making another row, right? But instead of doing that, we're going to use that A bead in the corner as our new corner bead here, as the first bead in our row. So instead of picking up a new bead and going through this one, just like we would regularly do, we're going to go through that one. And we're going to go through it from the inside of the work to out. So from right to left, if you're holding the work in the same position as me, where your stop bead is on your right hand, going from right to left. And it is super weird. I totally agree. But so worth it, because once you get past this like one part, which is like you're on an alien planet, once you're past this part, then everything, I feel like it kind of clicks into place. And I hope it's the same experience for you guys. But we'll show all that too. So we're crossing over here, going through that one, and then again, just going through that our next up bead here. And so there it is flat, but it looks like flat. It just looks like that. I'm just going to hold it up a little bit. Out of this one, through this one from right to left, and then back through here, again from right to left. And when we pull it tight, it does that little cannoli shape again. So definitely a tricky one. I was a little timid to teach this one because it's an advanced stitch. So if you're feeling like, well, this is kind of, yeah, because it's advanced, it really is. It was advanced for me, and I got through it, so I know we can all do it. But it's definitely one that I feel is rewarding, because once you have it down, you can take this so many places. It's a great toolbox item. And yeah, so what I did here is I threw another bead on to the strand, and I've gone ahead and gone through my next up bead, or about to anyway. So my next up bead is here. Coming through it. I'm gonna try to get my hands out of the way a little bit so you guys can get a better view. There's that one. And really it's kind of cool because you're just working a regular row. It doesn't feel like it, but it really is just a regular row being worked into the same places as we were when it was flat. Just coming along to make another one. Another one. And here's one more. And I noticed that once I get the rest of the row added like that, this connection here tightens up. Oh yeah, yeah, that's a great idea, man. It'll be beautiful earrings. And because this is kind of like a 6mm bead size, I feel like a head pin with the 6mm bead through it, it would look like the coolest earring. Because you can make it into a leaf. If you did it in green, you could say it's a leaf around like a petal or like a bellflower or something. It's inspiring. So many places you can take that. And I'm gonna grab another A bead. And as I was saying, like with the pattern before, you're only gonna have to add your A beads now on this side. And this side will stay this side the whole time. It's gonna spiral around as we go. So here's my new A bead. And I'm gonna come up and go through the next up bead. So just like when it was flat, we had an up bead, we picked up a bead and went through the new one. So here's this one. Just gonna go through it. And we're gonna pick up another bead here. Go through the next one. Just keep building those rows. Yep, cannoli earrings. I love it. All right, so now I'm back to where we were on that first sample where I stopped. And I stopped there because we're going to add our last bead for the row, which is going to be a color B. And what we're going to do is we're going to use this bead as our next up bead to go into. So the one that is next in this spiral. And if this was exactly like positioned exactly correct, like flattened it, you could see these are our two beads that would normally be sticking out. You know, how peyote stitch kind of sits like a brick on top of the others. And you can kind of see where like this B bead is sitting on top of those two. So you've got this one and this one. So our next up bead, when we're coming out of this bead, picking up a new B bead, that one is our next up bead. And it can be a little challenging to see. But the good news is if you go through the wrong one, it's kind of noticeable because what you'll get is a gap. If you go through the wrong bead in this line here, and that's another reason this pattern is so good, because it helps you see where the line is, and it, for some reason, can help with visualizing where the next up bead is when you get to this part of the row. But you'll get a gap where this one won't sit exactly right if you go through the wrong one. And I've never really had a problem with it, but it's something that I watched for every time I did one of these turns. So you go through here, and now you need to turn and come back and go, you know, what we would do if this was flat, again, is we would pick up a new A bead, and we would go through our up bead, which is this one right here, right, as we turn. Well, in this case, we're going to borrow the next one in a row, which is why we end up not having to add an A bead again on this side, is because you've got one already. We're going to borrow them all the way up. And every time we run out, we add more, right? Because that's how this, how it stacks up. It's very, very cool. But when you do that, you get this little turn, right? And then this is the only other thing you got to remember. Now I'll show this a few times, so don't worry, but you want to come back through this bead to complete that turn. And that's just a series of borrowing. We borrowed an A bead and we borrowed a B bead here. Do that turn. So let's show that again. Come back out. And I've been trying to, in my mind, like come up with better ways to explain that might help you see it, help it pop a little more. And the best I could come up with was that idea of like you're borrowing a bead to finish those rows. But so here's where we were at the end of that, where we had, you know, we had started this row back, picked up a B bead here. And this is our down bead. Here's our next up bead, right? It's this one here. And we'll do this one here and we'll switch back to that other sample and we'll do it again there too. So there's that one. And then up through this next one adjacent to it. And you're heading away from your stop bead if that helps anyone, because it can be kind of confusing. You're going to where you have space, right? You're not going to go back through like that one. We're going up, always forward in the work, away from the stop bead, because we're building this way. So you'll want to turn and come up. We go through here. And then just to get into position where we can head back and start finishing our row, I'm going to head back through that BB we were exiting from originally. So it's a full loop. You're basically coming down through here, adding this bead, heading through this one, turning through the adjacent one to come back up, and then just going right back through that bead we added. So it's just a full circle. And then from here, it's a little easier. Yeah, and Cindy, it's a tricky one. I had to put my thinking cap on a couple times, just trying to figure out like how am I going to explain, because I feel like you'll see it once you're there. It's just kind of it looks scarier than it is once you've done it a few times, I feel like. And this is just me adding a B bead in between each up bead just to get to the end of this row. And so from here, I'm going to go ahead and do one more row back. And then I'm going to switch to that other sample and we'll just do this all again. But so here's an A bead. And again, this is the only side you'll ever have to add them on. So this open side here. Going through. And then I'm going to pick up another B. And then I'm going to keep traveling to the center here. Going through the next up bead. All right, we're at that spot again. We're on the inside. So you see we've gotten through, we added a B bead, went through our next up bead. And now I'm going to add another B bead. It's coming down, or I think it is. There we go. Adding another B bead, and now we need to figure out where to go. So our next up bead is this one. And another way you can tell what your next up bead is it's the one you came out of last time to go back through. So remember, we went out of this one and back through here. Well, now we're going through that one. Now it's our up bead. Pull that down. And then come up through the adjacent one, which is the next one coming along here. Oops. And up through the B we just added. So you can see it's starting to grow. And that's how it starts. And then that's literally the same thing over and over again until the end. And let's see, I'm going to bring back that other one from where we were here. This is one where we left off right before that first turn. And I'm thinking I'll take this one back to flat and we'll do all that again in just one swoop. I didn't leave quite as long of a tail on this one, making it a little easier to work with. And so all I'm doing now is I'm just taking this sample back to flat. All right. So let's keep going start to finish here. All those steps combined. Here's our flat one. Get my mat back here. And so we're gonna make that cannoli again by creating this one is our next up bead. Or our next added bead, sorry. And then coming down through our next up bead. So I went from here to here through that top bead, and then from here to here to the bottom one. There's our little loop there. And pull it tight. And I've got that little gap. See that little gap where that bead is getting all loose? This one here. If that's happening to you, go ahead and back out. And I'm going to show that reinforcing step again. You shouldn't need to do it on every single turn, but I feel like it really helps on this first turn. So here's where we left off with our flat piece again. Do what's called essentially an odd count turn. Just go back through the adjacent A bead. Go back through the one B bead that's just kind of to the forward position under it. And then come up through this two here. All I did there was I locked this one in because this is the one that's going to support a lot of weight, and the threads that were supporting that bead, we're putting a lot of weight on those when we bring those two pieces together. So if you add that little step, it might save you, it might make your work feel tighter. So I'm going to come up through this bead here, go in that direction. And then back through that one we just enforced here. I'm just going to pull that tight. And now all I need to do is complete my row here by adding those B beads in between, going through my next bead here. So there's one. And two. There's three. And four. So there's that row. So it's all set. A bead coming back. And then B going into the center. We're heading for our first turn on the center row there. Okay, so I've got the B bead here. And you can see where another way to kind of figure out what that first up bead is, or the next bead you go through, is actually the one we joined. It was that top corner bead. And you can see the thread coming out of it. and going into this bead here. That's another way to recognize it. Because, you know, with the flat one, it's always the one that you added last, right? That becomes your next up bead. The ones you added in the row before. It's the same here. Same scenario. It's just that because it's in this shape, it hides its identity a little bit. But so you want to go through that bead there. And then we're going to turn and come through the one that's just above it, heading away from our stop bead. And it looks far away right now to get back through that BB we just added, but when you go through it, there's the BB we just added, really tightens up. Check that out. And I feel like it just pops. And so let's do that reinforced step. Yeah, Kylie, that's a good question. I actually do sometimes do that, and I think I know what you mean. I'll show it. We're about to get there right now. I do sometimes do that if I notice that it needs it. And I notice it kind of makes a difference what bead I'm using. I worked with some less regular beads when I was playing around with the stitch on the plane on the way back last week, and the beads I was using, or perhaps it was just the wobbly, you know, position I was stitching in, I needed to do that reinforcing step almost every time to get it to look right. So I'll show it now. Coming back through here. Okay, so I'm about to start a new row. I'm picking up my A bead here and coming up through here. But what was happening, and this is what Kylie's question was it was doing this, right? I'm exaggerating it, but this is what was happening to me. And then I would pull it through and it'd be like all that, right? So if that is still happening to you and you want to prevent it, before you add your A bead to start that new row, do the same thing we did before. It's literally the same steps, but it's in this curled position, so it's harder to see, but literally just going to go back through. If you can do it in one swoop, it's easier, but go back through those two beads there. And then come back down through these two. And what we did there is we locked in our B bead, this one, because this is the one that's going to take the pressure when we add, right? And it's going to take the pressure now and later when it becomes one of these turning corner beads. And that happens when you reach, as you build here, it becomes your next pressure point. So if you feel like doing that every row, go for it. I don't think it adds thickness. I think it actually stays flexible. The one that I made traveling, that one's become like a bracelet already. It's being worn, and it's flexible, and it bent over leather really nicely. And again, those beads were super irregular that I was working with. They were just, my mom had picked them up at a shop. She's like, oh, these are the prettiest colors. I don't even know what they were, but they're gorgeous colors. And they were definitely all over the place in the sizing. But you can make them work. You know, you can make all these ideas come together. So now I'm gonna, oops, I'm adding the wrong color, sorry. I'm gonna do that turn again. So I'm gonna slow down a little bit here. Here's our A bead. Remember, this bead's gonna become a lot of things. We're gonna go back through it. Going through our up bead, and the way you can tell is it's the one that our thread was coming out of and going into last time. Come down through there. And then up through the adjacent one, heading away from our stop bead. And then up through that bead. Same one, it's the one we just added. And I'm just gonna keep going, maybe do a few more rows. And then if anyone wants a break, it's all we've hit the hour already. That went a little faster than I thought. And I know there's gonna be, oh yeah, go ahead.
Carmi, hi.
Hey.
I just want to tell you are at the 1 hour mark.
Yep.
It might be, if this is a good spot, I'd love to give everyone a 3 or 4 minute comfort break.
Yeah, I think it is.
If anyone needs a quick run or grab a glass of water. Kylie, I'm watching you. I'm dying to know if you've got it. Yes?
Yay, hooray. Cool.
you're at the top of my screen, Kylie. So I'm definitely. Oh, you do have it.
There we go. Awesome.
Wow.
Well, that's great. Yeah, let's take a break. We're right where we hope to be at the hour. So we have lots of time to cover that closure. I know there's going to be a lot of questions on that one. So I want to make sure I leave the full time for that. And I've got water, so I'm taking a break here. Oh, hey, Pat.
Danielle?
Yeah.
I just want to let you know, Kimberly has said that, she's loving once she gets past the complicated part. Would you please show picking up on the tail side and starting to work from that end?
Yeah, definitely. It's this, yeah, super easy. You guys will love it. It works up the same way.
So Danielle, I think give it about 15, 20 seconds and you're good to go.
Okay. All right. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and just recap what we did and then just give you guys a heads up of what I'm hoping to cover before we end. It's a lot of stuff, so apologies guys for the pace, but it's a big one. This is a big project, and I want to make sure you have a resource that you can refer to that shows everything you might run into when you're working on your own. So what we've done here is we started it. We did our beginning flat 11 rows, and then we brought them together and we did a few rows. And before that, we started with a really long strand, a double, a comfortable working length, and we brought a stop bead to the midpoint. And we built from there. And why that's key is what Carly said a second ago is you have the added bonus of being able to work from this side, from a starter side. And so I'm going to go ahead and grab a needle here and move these aside for a second. And I'm going to go ahead and just do something a little different. I want to show you adding from your starting side, and then I want to show you adding thread in general, because that's going to come up. You're going to need to do that. Even if you're just doing a bracelet, you're going to want to know how to do that. The good news is it's easy, and it's kind of like we always add thread in a flat, but seeing it in the round might help. So we'll do that, and then we'll show our finishing, which is I'll show the one that I featured in the design, and then we can just talk through some of the others. If there's time, I can show you the leather. It was a bonus I had in case we had an extra minute or two. Okay, so I'm going to jump in here. Here's what I've got on the mat. I've got a bracelet and it's almost long enough, but not quite. And I need to add thread on one of my sides. It's too short. So let's do a thread add and then we'll keep stitching along. So what I usually like to do with my thread adds, and this was also my starting side. I want to show that I had a stop bead on there. This was my starting side. So I'll put a needle on it. I'm going to do a row or two with my what I've got left here, and then we'll do a thread add so it's easier for you guys to visualize, like exactly step by step what it might be like if you, so imagine this is a super long tail that you would have to work with. That through there. And I'm going to work with these colors. They're easier to spot. Okay. So from here, a bead, and just come back and go through. Or actually, I switched colors. Now my yellows are my B beads now. And then to come up through my next up bead. See how easy that is? So no matter which side you're on, you just start going. There's really no turns you have to do, no additional step. In fact, sometimes it's hard to even tell what your starter side was because they're identical. And when you get to the center here, it's just again identifying your next up bead, which will be the one that your thread is heading into the last bead from, and then turning and coming up through the adjacent. And then just carrying on like that. So I can pull that out and show that again if anyone wants to see that again, but this was my starter side on that piece. Or I can also just grab back one of these old cannolis here that we had from earlier and show it on there too. Actually, that might be a good idea because it's very clear from here. Grab the pink one. Okay. So we were working on this side, remember? And here's our starter side. There's our stop bead. Pull that stop bead off. Get my needle on here. I used to come with all my needles pre-threaded. They always fall off and end up in somebody's foot. So because I'm moving the work around a lot on my table. So now I just I just learned how to thread them really quick. But there's our starter side. And again, we're just gonna pick up our next beads and start going. Pretty much just like we've been doing on the other side. And that's what I love about this design is there is no, it's kind of like an infinity. You can join them. I know that's one of the questions I was kind of anticipating getting. You can join them and it looks amazing when you put them together. It's tricky because you have to end and get the length right with it in the right position to join. Because as it starts to spiral around, you have to have it where, for example, see how I have two opens facing us at the top? You would have to end it where one side's like this and the other side's like that. And then they meet together just magically. So in this case, I would have to keep stitching on one side until that side turned face up and this side was face down, and then you just bring them together and connect. But I didn't want to include that in today's class because I actually think it's hard to get them to meet the right length. And I have not successfully liked one that I've tried to join yet. I feel like I either had to force them to kind of meet in order to have the correct length, or they're too long or too short. I'm still working on it though. Maybe I'll do like a short video of how, if I ever figure out how, maybe a trick to get the length right, that I feel like is worth sharing because it's one that might frustrate. But I don't want to discourage anyone from trying it because it's absolutely possible and it's a beautiful look. But yeah, so there was my starter side and I just started going. So I can work simultaneously from either side. I can switch back and forth in the middle of, you know, from row to row if I want, and just keep going. It's also handy if you're doing a pattern where your colors change on the length of the robe, because it gives you control of what, like, exactly where your center is. Yeah, so let's add thread. Let's go back to my other sample when we're running out. And I wanted to grab this. I'm going to switch to black so it stands out from my old thread. So it's easy to see where I've added. And all I'm doing here, again, I'm flattening the end. And I do this with Wildfire because it's hard to get it through the needle if you don't do that. So there's that flattened end. Let's get it through here. Pull a little bit of thread off. And that, my friends, is the last of Black Wildfire that I currently have. We wish I'll get more by next Friday. Or actually, next Friday's Labor Day, right? I have 2 weeks to get more. So I'm going to pull these out. I want to switch to working with some of my barley color again. Okay. So there's my old thread, and it's just a little too short, and I want to add new thread. And what I like to do is the same way that that I've shown on other kinds of designs, is I like to leave my old working thread in place and work my new thread in, create some rows, and then work my old thread up into those new rows because it reduces bulk. The cool thing about this design though is that you know, it doesn't really get bulky. I haven't gone crazy with weaving in and out of it, but I have noticed that it still flows even if I have a couple weave-ins going. So as an example just of where you can start, you can kind of enter the work anywhere. Just pick a spot that's a little bit back so you have some zigzagging to do before you, the goal we have here is to exit from where I left my old thread off. You want to exit from here. So we're just going to do some turns. Just go ahead and pull through, leave a tail that you can see that's long enough that you don't lose it. And we'll know when we have a solid weave in because it won't move anymore when we pull on this working thread. So for now, all I'm doing is just going through, following the existing thread path. Just pulling the thread through. And hold my old working thread out of the way so it doesn't tangle up with my new. Just keep going. And what I did there was a turn. And it's just random, wherever I felt like doing a turn. You can go through the adjacent bead in the opposite direction. And I wanted to show that it doesn't jump out at me. You can see it a little bit, mostly because I changed thread color, but if that was white thread, you wouldn't notice it and it wouldn't be bad. Let's test to see if it's still moving. And see how peyote stitch is magical because already that's barely moving. So I only need to do a few more. Probably just this turn here will do it. And there we go. So now I'm just going to keep traveling to get to where I need to be. And I know I've got a solid weave in of my new thread. Okay, and now I'm exiting from where my old thread was. And a question that I sometimes get asked about, once you meet your old thread, can you do a knot? You can, but with the advisory that when you later, and you will have to later get through that bead, you're going to have a knot blocking your bead. So that's why I don't knot, but a lot of people do, and you just have to kind of push your needle around the knot. So it's up to you, but I usually don't. And here I'm going to just trim this tail now. It's not moving anymore when I pull on the working side. So I'm going to push down, pull up, trim that to disappear, and then just keep going. So this is what I want to show the finishing on. So I'm going to work on the original color palette here. And I bought some size 10s. I just grabbed some size 10 seed beads. I'm going to do a few more rows with my new thread and show what I do with an old thread, and then we're going to finish that edge. Here's my silver color. Let's do like 2 more rows and then get rid of my working thread, old working thread. There's that one. Yeah, and I would actually really love to see if one of you guys does one where you join it, please share it with me, tag me or something, make sure I see it, or put in our Facebook group. That's probably the best way to make sure I see it. So that, I don't know, I might need to get some tips from you. I'm trying to figure out how to advise people to get their length right. Because I think once I have that, I feel like I'll be confident to teach it. But I've succeeded only experimentally, and I feel like it was luck. So I don't feel like I can confidently share it yet. It's my old working thread getting all tangled up. Okay. Here's that turn. So I went through, that was my up bead here. And let's just come along and do our turn here. So it's just blending right in. And your old working thread will just hang out in the last bead where you left it until you're ready to weave it in. And I don't feel like it gets loose. It doesn't have any problems with that because we did some strengthening of the kind of the rows that were before it when we brought in our new thread. There we go. Oops, almost grabbed my 10s. Okay, I'm gonna keep going this way. And here's another turn coming through that next bead there. Coming up. Okay, so I'm gonna travel back out to this edge, and then we'll get that pesky old working thread out of the way. So what I did is 2 rows back and forth. So you could say a total of 4 in that case, but 2 complete trips back and forth. And I'm going to follow that with the old thread. There's that one. Here's that old thread that we left off. Okay. And so I'm going to just turn and come up through the first new row here. And just travel on through. And so, yeah, adding thread, it takes a little bit of time. It's a little bit, but it's really not that big of a deal. I'll use it as a breaking point. Like, for example, if I've got to add thread, maybe that's when I'll take a break. Come back and do it later. But I was actually inspired by another tip that I heard from Jill Wiseman, was she was saying that it's a deterrent to come back to your work sometimes, knowing that a thread ad is waiting for you. And so she always adds thread before taking a break. And I can relate to that, because I have that same feeling. It's like, oh, I can add thread. And so I'll set it aside for longer than I otherwise would.
Danielle?
Yeah.
Would you use an Eslon or a similar thread so that you could match it to your beads?
You know, you could. It certainly works in stitches like Kumihimo. My thought about Eslon, because it's a text 10, is that it's not going to fit through a needle. So unless you're using like one of those big eye needles. But maybe, I mean, if you can get it through a size 8 seed bead, then you're gold, right? You can do it.
Thank you.
So my old working thread is woven. I'm gonna trim it. And that's how you add thread. And you'll have to do that at least a couple times for a bracelet that's about this long. So 7 inches so far that I got going here, give or take a few millimeters, but it's within the noise of about 7 inches before I finished my my edges. Your edges will add about maybe 3/4 of an inch before you put your clasp. Oh, okay. Yeah. I just saw Kimberly's question. So if you're thinking of the colorful thread, the size D, yeah, size D is like the same as Nymo. Should be fine. I do find Wildfire, because it's thick, and it's kind of got some, I don't know, it's got some shaping to it. It makes stitches like tighter, maybe. I feel like I need to reinforce more, but the like the bracelet I was doing on the plane, I made that with a size D, bobbin thread, and it just needed a little extra reinforcing. Like, for example, that turn that I showed on the edge, I did that. That could be one of the reasons I needed to do that, is because I was working with maybe a little different kind of like more Nymo-ish thread than one of these bonded ones. So yeah, that makes sense. I think that would work. Okay, so these edges, these ends, optional, completely optional, and totally something I just came up with playing. You might love it, you might not. So if you don't like it, you can always just end them just like this. They're really beautiful, just like that. You can run your leather through. But if you want to taper it down, what I did here was I went with kind of a 2-1-2-1 with size 10. And what that looks like is kind of 2-1 drop peyote. And it sounds complicated, but it's not. It's just for a while, I substituted my B beads with 2 size 10 and my A beads with 1 size 10. So anywhere I would have added 1 size 8 bead in my color A, I just switched that for a 10, size 10. And again, I'm working with the size 10 and size 8 check. And then wherever I would have added one of these, I substituted 2 size 10 seed beads in the same stitch that we've been doing. And I did that until I ran out of edge rows that were in size 8. So here's what that looks like. This is a size 10 seed bead instead of a size 8. And I'm just starting my new row here, right? Coming back, going through. And it's going to look like it's too small, because it is, right? But then when you add the 2 next beads, which pick up 2 size 10s, and then come through your next up bead here. And it kind of starts to taper it down. Yeah, I should grab another color. It's a good idea. Thank you. I'm going to pull that out. Behind me, I have a bunch of 10s, luckily. Let's do blue, Yeah, turquoise. Turquoise is always a win, right? So here's a size 10 check in just a little better color. Okay, so I'm going to substitute one size 10 for my size 8 for the first one, for the A bead, A color. And then let's grab, let's grab red. We'll do red for my B. Now on my sample, I used all the same color because I really wanted it to just kind of like all flow together and not stand out as much. But here's two size 10s in just a different color. We're going to substitute that for all of our size 8B color. So it looks like that. You can already see, like, even if you just did one row like this, that's a pretty finish. You could just be done right there if you wanted to. But if you want to go all crazy and make it, what I was trying to do was I was trying to make it look like kind of like a little end of a tail, like a snake's tail. There's two. You guys are funny. There's my turn. You know, just went through my next turning bead. And remember what we did before? We went through our turn and then we had to come back through our B. You didn't have to do that still, but with these two. But it's the same step. We're just treating those two like one. And I love this because it kind of reminds me of like we did a class where we mixed it up. I'm going to do another one. So if you missed that one, I'm feeling like in October we need to do some more multi-drop peyotes. There's two going through the next two. And yeah, sorry, Pat, you missed the beginning, but the replay is always better anyway, because you can pause it and follow. This was one where we had to cover so much that we had to kind of go a little quick. But we're doing good now. This part of the ending, this closure, it takes a minute to show because I want to show you how to keep tapering it down. So I kind of have to go through the whole thing. Oh yeah, so now I'm at my turn. So everyone saw what I did. I just put two, went through those two, went through the last two. Just treating them like the up beads, just like we did before. We're just bringing it along, putting two in between each one. And sorry, I need two more here. Come through there. Yeah, no worries. These are all there for fun. There are fun times. And I'm glad you're here too, Pat. All right, and so I'm turning and coming back through those two. So, you know, just treating it like our up bead, doing our turn. Just like we did with the 8s, we're just doing it with the 10s. I'm gonna make sure that's in focus. Sorry about that. It's going out of focus. Okay, yeah, and so that's just coming along. Again, we're gonna keep doing two. And what I did was, and you can always shorten this up too. You don't have to make it as long. But what I did is I kind of kept going, adding two in place of every B until I ran out of these, which for us is another 4 rows away, 4 complete loops away. So a little bit to go. But it's really good to show it, I feel like, because when we, as we're going, you're going to see lots of interim stages where you might like what you see and decide to keep it right there. Right now it's doing a little fan thing. Which is pretty. Even just like that. Here's our turn, coming up through this one. And through those two. So we're skipping those down beads, going through our next up beads. And what starts to happen now, we've got a few rows going, is notice how it's kind of collapsing on itself. And the 8s don't do that, but the 10s will. See how it's folding in a little bit? Eventually it will tell you it's time to taper down to 1, 1. So right now we're doing 2 with an edge of 1, and then we're going to taper it down to all 1 bead. And it'll just kind of naturally look like it needs it, right? So here's our 1 turning bead. There's this really pretty scallopy look that it has that I'm not sure if it comes across as striking as it looks to my eye, but it really does look cool. Oh, thanks. Thanks, Sharon. Oh, thanks, Valerie. And here's my edge bead. Just picking up one for that edge bead there. We're almost to where we're gonna switch down to 1 for 1. I'm gonna tighten that up. You could also do that turn there. The little reinforcing turn that we were doing, that still works even with the smaller beads. Another reason I wanted to show this is because it can give you ideas for how to change up your work. You can switch back and forth actually between different bead sizes. And think about how much texture that might give your design. And it also enables you to work with a different size bead. And maybe you have a color you want to use, but you don't have that all in size 8. You're not stuck with size 8. You can work with 10s like I am. You can even throw 6s in there. One of the coolest ideas that I have not tried yet, but anyone familiar with Cellini, like a Cellini spiral? You can do a pseudo Cellini in this same stitch. When you start your first square, the one with the 8s and 11 going on there, you can just put like a row of size 6 in the center. And it'll look just like it. You can just keep going. You just keep stitching along. And it will look just like a Cellini spiral, because you've added that new shape, that new, and it doesn't matter that it's a different size than the others, because as it spins, you just stack enough beads next to it that it just kind of comes along, just like it would in a regular Cellini peyote. So that's on my list, bucket list things to try. It's a long list, especially in the bead world, but I've got a little tight bead here. Let's see. There we go. Okay, a few more, and then we're going to change it up. There's our up bead. Okay, I'll get back in position here. So here we've gone through this one, coming up through the adjacent one. It's our last one. So it is time to taper it down. And it's up to you, but you can, if you want to, you can start tapering it now, or you can get to this row and taper it on the way back. I think I did it differently on a couple of the samples, and it worked both ways. But I'll go ahead and start it now, and just to show you where I did that switch to blue for all of them. So now I'm not adding 2 anymore, I'm just adding 1. And it's up to you if you want to do it here, or if you want to finish this row and come back and do it. Got one more tight bead here. There we go. And there's one of those. So we're just 1 bead into the next up bead, which is still those, 2 from before. And here. So now it's really going to start to curl in. And pick up one more. Turn and come back. And again, there's no reason that you have to make it as long as I made it. You can make it shorter. Meaning you don't have to have this many rows. The only reason it kind of worked out for me doing it this way is that trying to taper down 1 to 1 while I still had these to work with made it a little more tension driven, meaning to get it to taper with ease, I had to work a little harder. I had to do a little bit of those reinforcing turns. If you wanted to make the taper less long, meaning you wanted to start pulling these 8s down to a 10, you'd really have to pull pretty tight. And I felt like it was better like this, so that's why I did it like that, but I feel like it would still work even if you wanted to try it a different way.
Danielle, do you recall how many rows of 2 you did?
Yeah, it's exactly going to be the number that you had remaining when you started here. So let's go back to this side. So it would be count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 trips this way. So it's 10 rows, but remember they're round trips. So 5 round trips. Traveling down. You're going until you run out of 8s, until those 8s become your 10s.
So until your last 8.
Yeah, until your last 8, which ends up being 5 round trips.
Thank
and
you.
That's just what I did. Again, you could do something different and it would look great. But I thought it kind of looked like like a snake's tail, And so from here, I'm going to just do a few rows like that with just the ones. Coming up through this one. Same stitch convention. I'm not adding any changes to the stitch. I'm just keeping it the same way we've always done it. I've just been changing the number of beads I've been adding. And when you get it this collapsed, it starts to become difficult to see your up beads, but they're there. So my next one, I have 1 more up bead to go. And then from here, I'm going to make a loop. And I think I did a loop of 6. Let me just take a quick look at it. It's up to you how many you want to add. I did a loop of 6 on this one. And it's exiting from my last bead that I added here. So from here, I actually went back down to the 8. And it just kind of creates a little loop there. And it's hidden on one side. And if you wanted to put on a jump ring now, you could, or you could add your jump ring later. But this is it's still hollow in there too. To reinforce it, you can just come back up through either of those adjacent beads in what's kind of like the spine of it, right? Come back up through it. And when you get back up here to the top, notice how my thread is exiting. Let me get back in focus. My thread's exiting from here, and I could go right back through that way. But if you want your loop to hug the bead that you're exiting, if you go through it in the opposite direction of where your thread's coming out, what happens is your little loop there will hug that bead at the top. And since we're going 3D, I figured it might look kind of cool. So that's what I did on my samples, but it's a knit and it's optional. If you like it, you can go for it. But it really doesn't matter which way you go. Go through either direction is fine. So this is my third pass through my loop. And all you have to do now is just weave in. So come back down, get through however many beads you can in your work, and then just start going through it just like we did when we were adding thread. And it looks kind of dramatic in this color, but in the silver, it blends a little bit more. But also consider like the design opportunity of being able to add a different color, like that could become a flower or a rose. And I've seen some other designers take this stitch and put drops in place of some of the beads. So they like stick out, just like someone would do with like a kumihimo design, where the little beads, like you could make all of these edge beads a drop. You imagine they would just stick out all the way down and then just be so neat. I'm going to raise up just a little bit. Yeah, me too, Cindy. I love drops. There's some really beautiful like Czech drops that I like to add to my designs that come in these like terra finishes and they just pop. They're just crazy cool. But you can go crazy. You can go crazy with this. You can, I want to show you another way to end it. You can put it on leather. We've only got a very short time, but I'm so happy I made it through this because I was worried I wouldn't make it. We made it. So I'm going to scrape all this out of the way. And if you guys are game, I'll show you how to do a leather real quick through this one. It's not very long, but it's good enough. And if you have a straw or just any kind of metal tube, it can help you do a barrel knot. What I like to do is a couple options you've got. Oh, Nakatamas, yeah. This is what we did for the Russian spiral, so I won't dwell on it too much. You guys can always go watch that one, but just in case anyone wasn't in that class and they're interested. What you can do is you can bring your leather through it. It's one end. And you can just get a straw or like a tube. I was in, actually, I think I got this from Kelly Sutton. This is just like a metal tube bead. And you can just wrap around like that. Go through here and pull it through, and you get a little barrel knot. And what's cool about that is you can just tighten it up to become a bracelet. This isn't a full length design yet, but even that would work. So quick and easy way to finish something. Another cool way you can do it is you can put a button on it. And that's it means you got to run double leather through, but you can easily do that. You just take and get one end going through here. Just like we did before, where we kind of strung it through. And then take this end and go through your button, come back down. Optionally, you can knot under your button, or you can just leave the loop in place. If your button's big enough that it will sit securely on the outside, which most of them are. Just bring it all the way back down. It takes some finessing, but you can just keep working at it and it will go. Once you get your end this way, just adjust your button. Try to get your button to stay over here. Do a knot here. And then make your button whole. Make sure it fits. Bring your button around and test it. And then do another knot. You can make it adjustable. So there's another way you can end it. And I do have a current like example of how that looks finished on my Insta. That's a really cool one. I'll post it also to our Facebook group later. Yeah, and when I finish this one, I'll certainly be posting this one. This is another color that I've got my mom visiting, and she has been going through all of my sea beads and stuff and pulling out her colors. And she gravitated toward deep sea mix. And she actually pulled those two together and chose our colors for this sample. So that's what these are here. This one is turquoise, and that's the deep sea. And this one flat was just it was just a flat pattern with blue on the edges and some of this in the center, and came out really nice. Any pattern you start flat in a stripe will do this. So you can just experiment and come up with so many different things. Very cool. Oh yeah, Cindy, I know. Retro blue mix has my heart. I love that mix. And an 8.0 version of that would be amazing. I agree. But that said, Trident 6.0. I mean, I'm curious. I think it would work. I was gonna try a mixed up 6.0, 8.0, so we can try that too, definitely. All right, so let's see. I left good 12 minutes here for questions, and I can also show the stuff we've got coming up. So we have all of our September classes ready to go. What you guys think about seeing? I'll go ahead and just start grabbing them just in case, because I know we're going to want to see them.
Danielle, I wanted to interrupt at this point and say at the beginning of the class, a few people did notice that they would like to offer you congratulations on being named an influencer by Interweave. That was no small feat. And being selected as one of 5 top beading influencers in North America, I think is a really wonderful achievement, and congratulations.
Oh, thank you guys. And thank you, Valerie, for that treat. That was such a surprise. Love it. Yeah, that was really awesome. I'm really just honored, and I was surprised too. I was like, well, really?
Well, it reinforces to all of us how lucky we are to have you as a teacher.
Oh, thank you. Hey, it reinforces it to me. How lucky I am to be here doing this. kind of the coolest dream, right? Or it is the coolest. Yeah, and so yeah, I'm just keeping on. We got more. We got more coming. As long as you keep sending me beads, I'll keep making classes.
Well, then, you know what, this is a great segue, Danielle, because we have done well over 80 classes. We're actually very close, everybody, to Danielle hitting 100. I won't tell you which class that is. We'll figure it out on the actual day. We need to do a recount and make sure the 100 is 100 and not 99. So because we've done so many classes and we're starting to have some new students, and a few of us have forgotten stitches, September is a new design of classes Danielle has come up with. And Danielle, tell us what you're doing for back to school.
We're thinking back to basics. So going back to the, 101 stitches. So ladder stitching, herringbone, doing some peyote, and then we'll continue that on in October, building on that with a little extra stuff. Like we'll do some like different counts of peyote, like 2 1-drop or 3 1-drop. And so for the month of September, it's just the basic 4, right? We'll do the herringbone, ladder, and we'll do the peyote stitching, even count flat. And then for the premium class that for September, we're going to do kind of like it's an advanced ladder stitch, but still really beginner friendly. So not like our usual premium classes are intermediate to advanced, they get kind of tricky or fill in the hours, right? But this one will be more relaxed, more chill, and we can cover a lot more stuff there. And then I was going to hit brick stitch first thing in October. So we've covered all 4 of the main ones, and then after that we'll start building on it. So what's on the mat now is the first class in September, and that's a basic ladder stitch. And it uses some size 3 Czech bugles, and size 8C beads. And the color palettes I chose for all the designs, they're going to match so that you can really see the difference between how this stitch looks, but with the same beads on the mat. So it's like the same beads over and over. And bonus, you only have to get just the same colors for the whole month. So you'll have everything you need, or you can pick your own colors, of course, they're all going to work. But so yeah, this is a bugle and size 8C bead stacker ladder. Super fun, super quick. And we're getting into gift season, right? So quick gifts and quick things you can make for your seller too. So awesome ideas there. And we'll do a herringbone stitch. And herringbone is a staple. It's one that I like. I have a style that I like to teach, and we'll go ahead and we'll cover that. I did put a little bonus at the end of this PDF for folks that still want to level it up. There's a how to do odd count in there. We won't really get to cover it in class because I think we're going to have a lot of beginners. We're going to spend a lot of time just covering, starting and working this stitch and tips for that. But there's a little nugget in the PDF for you advanced folks. And then I've got the peyote one coming up here. So for peyote stitch, here's just like the basic pattern, flat, even count. But in that one, I put an extra special thing where it's a make your own pattern. And this pattern is one that my son scribbled with crayons, and I stitched it for him. So you can see that if there's a blank one, if you bring that PDF up, that you can color in yourself with colored pencils and stitch it. But we'll cover how to do a pattern, how to follow a pattern, how to do the flat even count. And then here's the workshop. It's clipped on here, sorry. The workshop is a super easy one, but super unusual. I've never taught it before. It's bugles in a ladder stitch with it's almost like a square stitching going on here where you come back and forth. The thread path is fun. It's super weird and fun. So check out the PDF for that one. You're like, oh, that's weird. That's interesting. But it makes it so that you can do this start to finish in one thread pass. You don't have to do a bunch of making pieces and adding, which is super annoying, right? So this is all just one. Just going. And like a square stitch variation with a special ladder. Well, that's it. Yeah. September on the mat.
Danielle, will you put out your original for today's class?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And would you just so Paula knows, how long did you make it?
Oh, I believe I made it about 7. Let me measure it again. But I think it is with the clasp pushing like 19 inches around my. Well, I have one of those little circly things. Oh, well, here, my desk is a mat, so let's do that. It is from the tip of the magnetic clasp end to end, I'm getting 18.5.
What, could you put it on so we can see the length on you?
Yeah. Yeah, let me switch out of my, let's do a spotlight here. Oh, there. Thanks, Chanel. Okay, so on me, it's like a collarbone length, and that's kind of what I was going for, but it would look cool no matter what length you made it. You can make it longer. You can make it choker length too, and it'll look really neat. But I wanted a little bit like more like a collarbone length.
Danielle, we're commenting you have a slender neck.
Oh, no, well, I mean, so any size that you make it, it's gonna look the same. Like it's gonna look really brilliant, no matter what you do with it.
Perfect. So you did yours about 19 inches.
Yes.
And so maybe for most of us, we'll recommend 20, 21 for a little extra length.
Yeah, and you can always test it too. Like as you're making it, you can just hold it up and say, hey, like sometimes I use a ribbon. I'll like tape a ribbon on one side and I'll pull it from the other side and just hold it to see how much do I need to add.
Perfect.
That can help. Or you can use like a tape measure. Yeah. Super fun one though. I love making this and dropping it. But yeah, I enjoyed making it, and I think it's a versatile technique and really fun. And it's about to have a matching bracelet, so it'll be pretty cool.
Excellent.
Oh, I see Paula's already got hers. Oh, that's cool. Nice. Oh, that's cool. I should switch to gallery. I want to make sure I see everybody.
Cindy too.
Hey. Oh, Cindy, now I see you. Oh, there you are. Oh, cool. Oh, wow, that's neat.
Amanda, also Amanda, well done. Wow.
Oh, wow, look at Amanda's.
I'm
I like your
interested to
colors.
see the color palettes.
neat color palettes. Oh gosh, I hope you guys do picks and share too. Yeah, for sure. Oh, awesome. All right. Well, hey, I want to wish you guys a great weekend, and I'm available if you need questions. If you're stuck on anything, you can always find me. You can tag me in the group, and I'll see it there. You can find me on social media. I'm on Facebook and Instagram at Danielle Wickes Jewelry, and will help out as best I can. And wish you happy beading for a great
Oh,
weekend ahead.
Danielle, sorry,
Yeah.
Kimberly's new. I just want to make sure she knows you will
Mhm.
get a link to the recording of this class probably on Monday. And I just want to remind everyone, only the people who are in this class get the link to the class.
Mhm.
There are some students who just prepay for it, knowing they can't be here, but they won't be able to watch the class without having done that. So look out for that email on Monday. Make sure it doesn't go into your trash. If anything happens, you don't see it, always email Danielle by Tuesday or Wednesday, and she'll give you the link as well.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, thank you for reminding me of that. I can get you the link if they don't send it to you automatically. So just let me know. For sure, I'll send it to you guys. And yeah, we can't share them with anyone who wasn't here or who wasn't signed up. So good to have you guys here. All right, so just want to wish you a great weekend, and thank you again. Thank you so much for being here and for the congrats and the support you guys always provide. It's really it's not lost on me. I appreciate it so much. So, have a great weekend, guys, and lots of love to you. Hugs. Have a great weekend.